Sharif, a British aid worker I was speaking to earlier. Well, let's speak now to Dr. Arash Aramesh, a Middle East foreign policy analyst. He joins me via webcam from Houston. Arash, lovely to see you there. We're just getting news here. It's a very confusing situation, but the latest news we're getting from the Reuters news agency is via a UN official that evacuations are now back on. Encouraging, but as I said, slightly confusing.
Encouraging, and I just got this telex on the wires that there are reports that in eastern Aleppo evacuations are being resumed, but there's no guarantee that they won't be stopped again. So here, what happened the past 48 hours was after Islamist rebels in the Idlib province. Let's remember that the Idlib province is a more Assad-friendly province, even though the rebels have had certain successes in the past year and a half, 2 years. There are a couple of Shia villages that were under siege. These villages were deemed to be pro-Assad. One of the sort of tit-for-tat or reciprocal conditions for allowing civilians and rebels, for that matter, to leave eastern Aleppo was also to provide safe passage for Shiite villagers in these villages in Idlib. When rebels in Idlib started firing at the buses and setting these buses ablaze, well, we're getting reports that it was actually pressure coming from the Iranians saying, no, unless you stop attacking these Shia villagers trying to be evacuated, the Iranians and the Syrian forces were not going to guarantee safe passage to either civilians or militants in eastern Aleppo. So it's a terrible tit-for-tat retaliatory sort of move, but the price of which are being paid by the women and children of both those villages in Idlib and also in eastern Aleppo.
The other main advance today in the situation is the news that there is a compromise UN security resolution that's been put in place. We're expecting a vote tomorrow. It sounds as if everybody is more or less on board. Russia had been saying that they were going to veto it. But, as you've just been saying, tit for tat, does that mean Iran will also be on board with this? Because the finger is pointing at them a fair bit when it comes to halting these ceasefires and evacuations.
Iran certainly has a hardline position here to take, because Iran is not there to save the secular Ba'athist regime of Bashar al-Assad because it's a secular Ba'athist regime. No, Iran is there to save Assad because Assad has been a very critical ally for the Iranians, and also Iran counts on Syria to be able to support aid, train, and further enhance its agenda with Hezbollah in Lebanon. Not only that, Iran has, as the largest Shia power in the region, believes that it has this duty and obligation to serve and support all Shias from Iraq to Lebanon, Syria, even the Houthis in Yemen. Having said all this, Iran obviously does have a geopolitical interest and a national security interest as it views it to support the Shias there. So that was a red line for the Iranians, that if they are going to let eastern Aleppo civilians, mostly Sunnis, to be evacuated, and also if they're going to allow the Syrian government to allow safe passage for the militants, they wanted to see their clients, their Shiite brethren, to also receive the same safe passage. Having said that, as far as the UN Security Council resolution is concerned, anything that is going to have any language in terms of having blue helmet UN peacekeeping forces on the ground is most likely going to be vetoed by the Russians. And all you need is one country. All you need is just the Russians to veto any UN Security Council resolution. And if you want a resolution, you probably want to get it now. It's going to be less likely that a Trump administration is going to be on board with any sort of involvement coming to Syria. But the French and the British are adamant to get some sort of a compromise resolution in to alleviate and ease some of this horrendous pain and suffering, human suffering that we've seen, on par with Srebrenica, on par with the siege of Sarajevo, and on par with some horrific and horrendous battles of the Second World War that we hadn't.
Arash, I just want to jump in very quickly because I want to discuss the point that Putin has been talking of a ceasefire, but he's made the point that he doesn't want the UN included and he certainly doesn't want the US included. But many people are saying that that could all change once Mr. Trump is in the White House. Why does that matter?
Well, when Mr. Trump has promised a much more Russia-friendly posture and U.S. foreign policy. I don't know what that means. If anything, Russia is both tactically and strategically a U.S. adversary. Russian interests in the region and in the world are not what you would call parallel with U.S. interests. Russia views a lot of these issues as a zero-sum game and is willing to go above and beyond, even partaking in what people would call a genocide and a war crime to achieve its goals. I really do not know what the Trump administration has up its sleeve. On the one hand, you got key national security figures who are not exactly very pro-Russia, such as General James Mattis coming in as the Secretary of Defense. But then you got other figures who have shown a much softer face to Russia, and especially Putin. So we got to wait and see what's going to happen. But what Putin wants is no UN forces, no American boots on the ground, no British or French boots on the ground. He wants him to clean house, and he wants his Syrian forces and his Iranian allies to win and to clean house, and that's going to be bad news for the civilian population there.
Okay, Dr. Ari Aramesh, great to speak to you. Thank you very much. Thank you. And of course, we'll be finding out how this story and many others are being covered in tomorrow's front pages from 10:30 and 11:30 p.m. this evening in our papers. Guests joining me tonight are Martin Lipton, Deputy Head of Sport at The Sun, and Martin Bentham, Home Affairs Editor at the London Evening Standard. Now, the International Trade Secretary, Liam Fox, has refused to rule out Britain remaining a member of the European Customs Union after Brexit, which could limit the ability to cut free trade deals. He told the BBC's Andrew Marr that he was instinctively a free trader and he would have his say in the cabinet. Here's our political correspondent.